Am I allowed to have tint on my vehicle? Am I allowed to drive the vehicle without permission, whether there is factory tint or any type of percentages of tint? You would recognize that in Guyana, we have persons driving vehicles with a number of percentages in relation to their tint, whether it's 5%, 10%, 35%, 65%, and so forth. Now let's begin by understanding what the law says, or what the law say about tint, the use of tint. Now, our principal regulation that we will look to comes from the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Regulations. Of course, Regulation 103 A1 is very clear, and I wish to recite that for us. It dictates that no person shall have a level of tint that would obstruct the identity of the driver and persons traveling in that vehicle. Let us examine that. You are not permitted by law to have a vehicle or to drive a vehicle where the level of tint obstructs you from being identified, or for persons in your vehicle from being identified. Now, when it comes to an issue of the institution of a charge, the charge comfortably will have to be an obstruction of the motor vehicle, that the police have not been able to identify the person who is the driver, or a person or persons who are passengers in that vehicle. So the charge will have to comfortably be that there is a violation of that regulation. Now, let us go to the procedure. The procedure laid out by law is very clear. If the police are to confirm that the tint used on a motor vehicle is not a permitted percentage of the tint, then that has to be examined first. I am not sure that the police are equipped with a tint meter in Guyana, and that those tint meters have been gazetted for its use so as to examine a vehicle to determine the percentage of tint which is on that vehicle. Therefore, a charge that goes before the court in which the police have not properly examined or do not have the tools to examine the vehicle can be successfully challenged. You would recognize that at a policy level, the Minister of Home Affairs has the duty or responsibility of granting persons tint permits and allowing them to have a certain percentage of tint on their vehicle, which, if the police is to stop that vehicle by virtue of the fact that the police have not been able or had not been able to identify the driver or the passengers, then that tint license or permit, which is issued through the Ministry of Home Affairs by the minister, will be presented. Now, what is your responsibility and your rights under the law if the police is to stop you where you have a tinted vehicle. If the police stops you, if you have a tinted vehicle, then clearly the police, before a determination is made as to what is the percentage of the tint that is on your vehicle, then the police need to carry out an examination in which there is a tint meter in which the reading or the examination is established. Can the police, as we have seen in for the past few weeks, can the police stop your vehicle, allow you to exit your vehicle, and to have you strip your tint off of your vehicle? That exercise seems to be one that has brought quite a confusion, and I want to say clearly that that is not a lawful exercise. That is not an exercise that it was envisioned by the law, and that is not an exercise that you should and we should encourage as citizens of this country. If the regulations and the law makes provision for what is called a certifying officer, this certifying officer is one which is gazetted under the laws of Guyana, is gazetted, and it is that person who is, that person might be a sergeant of police, that person might be an inspector of police, but the laws of Guyana has given that person coverage because that person is a licensed certifying officer of the Guyana Police Force, which means that that person is permitted by law to examine a vehicle and to ensure that the vehicle has complied, that you have complied with the regulations and the law under the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act. Now, is a constable or a sergeant or an inspector or a commander or a commander who carries a rank sometimes of senior superintendent or an assistant commissioner, are they all certifying officers? The answer is no. They are specific persons who are given that mandate and who are been gazetted as certifying officers, and the law recognizes that person. It will mean that if that person has examined a vehicle and they go before the court to give evidence, one of the requirement that the court will encourage is that the person gives evidence as an expert. The person gives evidence as an expert by virtue of the fact that that person is a certified examiner of vehicles. Now, if you are going to be, your vehicle is going to be examined on the road, one of the first things you need to ask the police, you a certifying officer, which you are covered under the laws of Guyana, and you are authorized to examine a vehicle. If that police constable or whichever rank that person is not a certifying officer, then you have a right to refuse to have that police examine your vehicle so as to determine the fitness of that vehicle to be on the road. All right. Moving further is that if you are going to, I see that at a policy regulatory level, there is some form of contention that we may have in Guyana laws which allow us to have a percentage of 65%. Now, that can be very much, of course, debated because of the fact if the police are going to enforce that regulation or policy of 65%, then there has to be a method which determines that that tint used, the percentage is 65. I will say that the police have not yet, of course, confirmed these types of regulations. They have not confirmed these types of method and way in terms of how they can test the percentage of the tint on the motor vehicle. So, in closing, I will say there is a regulation which allows for the police to institute a charge for a driver who has failed to comply with the regulation under the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act. Which is to say that that person is driving a vehicle in which the level of tint which is used on that vehicle is an obstruction. It's an obstruction because the person or the examiner, the certifying officer, in this case, has not been able to identify the driver or has not been able to identify the persons traveling, which we would call the passengers, so that the police can institute that. But in terms of the examination, there is a right that you have to ask the police to ensure that a testing meter is available so as to confirm the percentage of tint use, and of course the person who is examining the vehicle, which we have not been seeing for the last couple of weeks. The person examining the vehicle has not been a person who is certified to do so, certified to determine whether the vehicle is a fitted motor vehicle to be on the road. I thank you.